All right, folks. Hello, welcome. I'm Dave. I'm going to be one of the folks that you're going to be hearing today. And this is Sanjan, my colleague. I drive Microsoft SharePoint Advanced Management suite within SharePoint and OneDrive space and Microsoft 365. A lot of the admin areas. And Sanjan, you want to introduce yourself really quick?
Hello, everyone. My name is Sanjan Mustafi. I am a product manager in SharePoint and OneDrive, dealing in specifically security, compliance, reporting, insights, and things like that. And nice to see so many people.
Yeah, a lot of people today.
You guys do really care about SharePoint data, your OneDrive data. Thanks for coming.
Yeah, it's awesome. All right, so we can kind of get going. I see there are still people coming in and out, so we'll kind of get started just because we have a lot of content to cover today. So before we kind of get going into the demos, we have a lot of demos to show you, a lot of things to show you, new things into the space. But before we get started, I want to kind of set the scene really quick so that we connect the demos to why we're doing it, right? So over the recent years, we've seen a lot of different changes in the environment, how people, in the business environment, but also how people work, live, collaborate together. And partly because of all the remote things that came in and the remote capabilities that came into our lives, right? And what has happened especially after the pandemic, we've been seeing this pattern happen before the pandemic, but after the pandemic, we've seen this obviously kind of increase in a lot more. So now, just a meeting or chat that would have taken, been in a hallway chat is now like a Teams chat, right? When I used to pop into my colleague's office and conversation, now it's usually an email or again a Teams conversation. So you can see like a lot of these things are. Even now that some of us are back to the office, it's still continuing. That's just now part of the normal. This exponential growth is also kind of contributing to the collaboration. It's contributing to the tools that we have to build, and it's also contributing to the growth in the data that we're seeing coming in. I'm not going to show you the slides that if you've been to any kind of a M365 session throughout this conference. There have been slides around the size of the data and everything else like that, so I'm not going to spend time on that, but it's exponentially increasing, and the governance is becoming really important. This is the perfect time for Copilot to come into place, right? Because as you have more, as your governance or the data footprint is increasing, finding things is becoming harder, right? And this is where Copilot comes in to really make things easier for you, to surface the information in much easier ways, much more natural ways. And it's doing a lot more than that, right? It's connecting a lot of the different data sources that used to be much, much harder to bring together. I remember this is kind of the feeling that I have with Copilot and before Copilot. Right, so I had a Trio 650, or Palm Trio 650, which I was just like super proud of in 2007. And then I saw the iPhone, and it was just like my Trio all of a sudden became kind of like this ancient looking device. So with Copilot, it was the very similar feeling when the first time I used it, especially in Teams, when it kind of did a big summary for me. So the first time I actually used it was a technical discussion. It was a lot of context, a lot of information that was shared. And then right after, I usually spend a bunch of time taking notes, summarizing everything for myself so that I can remember for follow-up meetings. This time I just clicked the button and I asked the Copilot to summarize it for me. It did this crazy summary with action items and everything else like that. I didn't have to have follow-up meetings with other colleagues to bring them on board. I just shared that content with them. Now, so Copilot really makes you really, really efficient, in other words. Now, let's imagine a scenario where one of my colleagues in this technical discussion that I talked about shared a top secret architectural document with me, right? Or with us in the team. And another person in the team, like, oh, this would be a great thing to share with some of my other colleagues just to catch them up. maybe not realizing that this document that someone shared was a very confidential document. So they share the team with a group of some colleagues. Now these colleagues all of a sudden have access to this architectural, really top secret document. And this is kind of what we call oversharing, right? This is an example of oversharing. It's a very kind of a common thing that we see across the board. This is just one example. There's lots and lots of different ways that you can overshare content. Most of it is unintentional, right? It's just a misunderstanding on how the tools work and understanding the power that you have, right, as a user. So the oversharing space, it's not a thing, and that's why I was kind of trying to emphasize that this is just one scenario. There are lots of different scenarios, and there are lots of parts to controlling oversharing as well. So this chart, or this circle, is showing you all the different things that you kind of need to be aware of and kind of be able to control when you are trying to protect the content that you have. This is another slide that you might have seen already. Again, I'm not going to spend too much time on this. SharePoint is connecting all the collaboration that you have in M365. So whenever you're sharing a document or connecting with someone, right, and they're contributing anything, it's all backed by SharePoint. So that's a really, really important concept to remember, because this is probably why we have a full room here, right? Is because when you're thinking about controlling your content, SharePoint is where you need to control the content. So SharePoint Advanced Management obviously is the natural place for having a lot of these controls and capabilities. When we talk about control of content. So here are the three different major buckets of challenges that we're seeing that customers have, right? So the first one is content sprawl. As I mentioned earlier, content is getting created, content is getting collaborated right? And it's growing, and the footprint is growing. And as the content grows, the sprawl grows as well. So you need to be able to control that. So you need to be able to decide things that are used and needed versus things that are not needed and not used. Because if you're not doing that, that's going to impact, obviously, storage and search experience within your organization, right? And now it's also going to impact the results of the Copilot, right? The second part is content oversharing. We're going to be covering this area extensively today. And oversharing is obviously like when you have a lot of content, there's a lot higher chance of people getting access to that content if it's not controlled and governed, right? And finally, with Copilot, you really need to be able to control what Copilot has access to and doesn't have access to. Certain things it needs to have access to. Certain things you have to be able to protect it, right? So it's not just accessible for everyone across your organization. And then the other thing is you need to have controls in place when something does get overshared or something does get access when it's not supposed to. You can very quickly go in and block that access. So we now have tools for you to really, within seconds, go and shut down access regardless of what kind of access it has, right? So that's really important. So these are the three big areas that we're really kind of going to center a lot of our conversation today on. Okay, so the first area is basically around analyzing and reducing content sprawl. So as I mentioned, this is a really important area because you need to be able to control your content. But the question is that, as of right now, many of our content documents, etc., they're created, and there's usually an owner that creates it, right? Because someone has to create that document. The issue is that once that document is created or that site is created, there are lots of things that could happen where the owner kind of moves away and the content becomes ownerless. Like, for example, if you think of like a restructuring, or a reorg, right? Or user or employee leaves the company, right? That content, all the content that they have, if the new owner is not found, that content becomes ownerless. And a lot of our security policies, a lot of our policies that we're going to talk about today, they really are designed to work with the owner of the content, because that's the person that really knows what the content is about. So they're the person that generally is asked to manage it and make decisions around it. So if you don't have an owner, that's a pretty big problem. So now we have a policy that we're going to be introducing. It's called Site Ownership Management Policy, which is basically going to automatically go identify the sites that don't have owners, automatically identify the owner, automatically start the communication with the owner, get their confirmation that they want to be owner, right? And then report to you. So all you need to do from the admin perspective is just set up the policy and let it run, right? So this is a really, really powerful tool, because right now it takes days to weeks to find owners. Like admins, I've heard some horror stories from admins around, them trying to find an owner, and it's just this whole big back and forth. So now they can do that within literally 5 minutes of setup. So let me show you really quickly how this works. Okay, so the first thing is you select the policy. In this case, we're going to be selecting the site ownership policy. We have actually two policies right now, inactive sites policy and site ownership policy. We're going to start with site ownership policy, which is basically going to help you find the site owner. The first thing that happens is you need to basically create the policy. Once the policy creation starts, there's a little blurb there that kind of describes what the policy does. Recommended to read it. The next thing we're going to do is essentially we are going to target the policy, right? So you can actually select the specific sites that you want to target, specific kind of site. So any kind of site that shows up in the SharePoint Admin Center is fair game here. So you can select by template. You can decide the creation source, a sensitivity label. You can now even include sites are under retention as well, because those also need to be managed, and those also need owners. And you can exclude sites as well. So that's basically that targets the policy, and that basically lets you kind of, and by the way, you can actually create multiple of these policies. So you can do it per, for example, site type. So you might have different policies or different requirements per site type. The next thing you're going to do is you're going to decide whether you want who should own the content, basically. In most cases, it's site owner. In some cases, some organizations give that responsibility to site admins. It's recommended for you to have 2 owners of content, so you can select that. The next, you actually have 2 choices. If the owner is not there, you can actually get the manager or the manager of the previous owner to take responsibility of that automatically. Or you can use the active site member to essentially take responsibility of it. So those are two options. Obviously, if you select at the top site owner and not the site admin, you'll have more choices here. And then we're also looking for active site members to be able to nominate a site owner. So sometimes the active member, just because I was active, that doesn't mean that I own the entire site, but they do know usually who should own it. The next thing is you're going to be able to actually, this is a huge one, you're going to be able to customize the email. We're going to automatically default to your logo. Yeah, it's a big one. We're going to automatically take your logo, organizational logo, and you're going to be able to plug in any text you want there. You can share links, etc. So towards the bottom there, you are actually able to set up an action if the site owner doesn't respond. So in this case, if the site owner doesn't respond, then the site goes into read-only mode, and then it gets locked out, right? So then until someone takes responsibility. Simulation mode is the way we're going to run this policy. We'll run the next policy in active mode so you can see how it works. Simulation mode essentially is not going to activate the policy, obviously, so it will just essentially just start the policy, produce a report so you can see how many sites you have that are ownerless, and then you can maybe set up some training or something to let your users know what's coming, right? Because they might get some email. So it kind of gives you a preemptive ability to do that. The report would look like this. So in this case, we found 520 sites that are ownerless. Not ownerless, but they're kind of meeting your criteria that you set up. So 420 of them only have one owner, so you need 2 owners. And then 100 of those don't have owners at all. Now, the cool thing about this is that we have tested this on 2.4 million sites. So although the numbers there look small, you can run it on any size of a tenant. It's very scalable and it's fairly fast, right? On 2.4 million sites, we've seen this come back in 24 hours. So it's, and we don't really have too many tenants that are larger than that. We haven't tested this, but we do know it works up to 10 million sites. So we definitely don't have any tenants that are 10 million, okay? So that's that. Now, the next policy I do want to call out really quickly is inactive sites policy. So we talked about the ownership policy. So now your tenant hopefully has owners for all your sites. The next thing is let's figure out which sites do you actually keep versus you can archive or delete or whatever you want to do with inactive content. This is again very, very important to do because if you don't have if you don't have your tenant cleaned up, the Copilot it's going to have pretty significant impact on Copilot. Your governance footprint is going to increase, right? So you want to really reduce that as much as possible before you go in and start managing things a lot more. Let's see how this works. All right, so similar to the ownership policy, here we're creating the inactive sites policy. We're going to actually scope again based on the site template. At the top, you can also indicate what you consider inactivity. So in this case, it's set to 3 months. You can set it up to 6 months of inactivity, right? So from 1 to 6 months. Again, you can go through and just configure the target with same as before, sensitivity labels, creation source, include retention labels, etc. And then here again, you have the site admin, site owner capability. Site owner is really the most common one that we recommend to go with. You can update the email and customize the email here. The policy guideline URL is a kind of an interesting one. So you can have external links outside of, like you can set up a site that has policies on it, and you can get your site owners to click on it if they have questions, for example, right? The next thing is the actions, which is really cool. So this is another really, really big thing that is coming here that people have been asking us about, is sequential actions. So you can actually now decide what happens if the site owner does not respond. The site owner gets 3 consecutive emails that is sent to them to attempt to kind of get them to make a decision. And then you can decide what happens at each one of those. In this case, we're basically saying, send the, let me pause that really quick and then we'll come back to it once the emails come in. So in this case, we're gonna actually activate the policy. The policy is gonna run. The report is generated. So in this case, we have 520 sites that are inactive. 350 are certified. So meaning the site owner decided to keep those, right? So 135 of them were put in read-only mode, and 35 were sent to archive. So this first email is basically the first email that the site owner will get. No action happens. It's just a notification that, hey, you have a site that we identified that is inactive. Do you need it or not, right? And you can go to the site. You can kind of check it out, et cetera, and move forward. The second email is that if the first email has no action, the second email is sent. The second email basically says, hey, your site is in read-only now. Please take an action. The third one is the archive one. So in this case, the site admin or site owner basically didn't respond 2 times. The third time it went into archive mode. Now the site owner is going to have to ask the admin, file the request to unarchive the site if they need it. So this is you can see how you can automate your basically some parts of the governance already. And these are really kind of important, really time-consuming parts of the governance that we have. Now, the final one here, before I pass it on to my colleague here, is the advanced AI insights. So this is a really cool yet very, very simple feature. So essentially, we have a lot of reports that are generated in Microsoft in SharePoint Admin Center, and these reports, admins take quite a long time to go analyze and figure out what they need to do with these reports, etc. So now any SharePoint Advanced Management report will have the ability, we'll have that button basically, that when you click it, we'll take that report, run it through the latest GPT models with prompt engineering, and then bring it back to you with basically analysis of what the report contains, right? So it'll basically give you kind of a patterns, it'll give you some examples, it'll give you recommended actions. This is the MVP product. We have a lot of plans around this. So this is just the starting point to help you kind of get going with your analysis. And a really quick review of that. And I love features like this. You just click one button, stuff happens. There you go. So this is basically, you clicked on AI Insights button. Every downloadable report will have that button available around it. You click on it, and then we just give you the analysis. All right, so now I'm going to pass it to Sanjan. Sanjan has a ton of new stuff to talk through around oversharing, so take it away.
Thank you, Dave.
Yeah.
I have a lot of content, and I was looking at Dave and thinking that, oh, can I finish everything on time? But I think I can.
You can. I have trust in you.
Yeah. I am the SharePoint admin. I need to save from oversharing. Yeah. So, as I said, since you care about your data and you're here, the story that we are trying to say is Copilot is here, AI is here. Your partners, your competitors are also using this product. You want to take advantage of this. You probably have purchased the license or are planning to. However, your data in SharePoint and OneDrive, you are worried because of several things, including oversharing. So today we are going to show you some new features that we are bringing in very soon that will help you first understanding where oversharing is happening, and then take steps to prevent oversharing from happening in different ways. So before I start, first question is, when I say oversharing, what are the different parameters that you use to say this file is overshared, this folder is overshared, this site is overshared? Okay. So when we did research with you and several other customers, there are 3 parameters that were identified. A, number of people that have access to a resource, a file or a folder or a site. Okay. The number of people that have access. Okay. You care about that. If it's too large, that's the definition of oversharing to you. The number of links or links that has a very wide range. Example, company shareable link or people in your company link. Okay, so that's a link that anybody who has access to can click and get access to the content. If you have a site with many files and every file has company shareable link generated, you might want to be aware. Maybe it's part of your business process, maybe not. So you might want to be aware. Similarly, if you see that there are any one link that are attached to your content, files, and folders, you want to be aware of that. So these are few broad pillars that when we researched, we found out. So the first report that we are bringing under this bucket, which is data access governance, is the permission state report. We already have the sharing link report. I will not cover the sharing link report today in details, but today what you can do is you can find out in the last period, in the last 28 days, who are generating these kind of links, from where these links are generated, which sites these links are generated, what is the classification that is attached to those sites, those files. Okay. You can find that information in the second report, which is sensitivity. It is important to know that, oh, I have this site which is marked as general and have a whole bunch of people in that site. However, that site has this folder with a lot of top secret documents sitting there. Okay. So why is this mismatch happening? Is it intended? Do you want it to be there? Do you want to move it? You can get all this information from that report. You can download the report in CSV format, okay, and then you can do further analysis. And as Dave was pointing out, you can run AI insights directly from the report without leaving the SharePoint Admin Center. I'll explain more on the state data reports that are coming. Few and advancements that we are doing, if you are familiar with SharePoint Advanced Management Data Access Governance reports, these are the main changes that are coming very soon. Number one, we had a cap on 10,000 rows. We now increased to 1 million rows that you can download in your CSV. Actually, that limit is a soft limit. You probably can download all the information about all the sites from any report that is there in our data access governance report. For your tooling purposes, you do not need to go through our UI. We are bringing APIs and PowerShell commandlets so that you can run the report directly from PowerShell, then plug it into your automated process and do further analysis. So all reports can be generated through PowerShell seamlessly. We did not cover in our V1 release OneDrives, but OneDrives is one of the biggest sources of storage of personal data, and then sharing. We generally save the data in OneDrive and say, okay, give a sharing link to somebody, to Dave. Our reports will cover now OneDrives as well, all OneDrives. So there will be 2 different categories, and I'll demo 2 different categories. Run my reports for SharePoint, run my report for OneDrives, and you can get that. Admin can schedule auto-run. So if you want to know what is happening month on month, week on week, depending on the scenario, you can create the report and then put it in scheduling mode. So it will keep running and then keep sending you, a notification that the report is run. You can go and see the results. Jumping into the new exciting report that we are bringing in. And the way we have articulated this is starting with the problem statement, the problem an admin would like to address, and then correspondingly what is our solution to that, what this report will do. So the first question that we are asking as an admin is, tell me where oversharing is happening. Tell me where too much permission is there, as we discussed. Okay. And the response to that is our new report, where you can go and say, and I'll show the demo, where you can go and say that, hey, show me all the sites where resources are permissioned to more than, let's say, 500 users or 1,000 users. Okay, whatever is your definition of oversharing, you can run that. As an outcome, you will get, I established there are 3 parameters that we highlighted. 1, number of people permissioned to any resources in the site. Now, you are aware that in a SharePoint site, you can break inheritance, which means the site can have, say, for example, only, let's say, 10 people as an example, but a folder inside the site is shared with 1,000 people. So we go deep recursively across all resources to count the number of people who has access, and then roll it up and report to your admin at the site level. So it says total number of users permission, count of anyone links, if there are anyone links that are attached to resources in that site. We will count the number and present. We will also present the count of company shareable links or people in your company link, as we call. Those are broad links. So we'll count that. So these are all indicators of oversharing. As an example, so once this question is answered, the next question is, okay, fine. Now I have identified oversharing. What is my next step? I need to take some action. So generally, for large complex enterprises, it is difficult for you as a SharePoint admin to go and yank somebody out of permission, because you don't know what impact will have on business on that, if you remove people from the site directly. So what you need to do is you need to have a communication with the business owners, the site owners. But today, that communication is happening via emails and some offline processes that you have. We want to make this communication as a workflow, as a first-class citizen within your SharePoint admin experience. So we developed a workflow where directly from the report, the SharePoint admin can generate access review to the site owners. So in this example, and again, I'll show in the demo, say for my finance site, I would like to connect with my owners of that finance site to find out, hey, in the finance group, there are only 500 people, but this site is shared with like 11,000 people. Like, is it the right business scenario? Okay, are you even aware that this is happening, and things like that? Okay, so identified oversharing. took action in telling the site owners and site admins that this is happening, you can do this at scale, which means you have several sites, hundreds and thousands of sites. If you generate this communication, you need to track it. So there is a central place now for SharePoint admins to track what are those requests that have been sent out over a period of time, how long they have been sitting, what actions they have taken, and what are in pending state. So completed, pending, somebody has not taken action, and I'll talk how to remediate that also, that you have tried to reach out to the owner, but they have not responded back. So what happens in that case? So we will talk more on that.
This was a huge ask as well from a lot of customers, because once you initiate the policy, especially some of the other policies that Sanjay is going to go through, it's really hard to tell which sites are actually running those policies, like have a centralized place to do that. So this actually brings it all together for you in one place that you can monitor and report off of.
Absolutely. Yep. So the last piece in the puzzle is your site owner, right? So site owner got notification from the admin that, hey, your site may be overshared. Some of the files, folders may be overshared within the site. So once that communication happens, and I'll show how the communication will happen, then the site owner needs to take action, right? So there should be a consolidated place within the site where the site might have hundreds of files, several folders, and things like that, nesting and whatnot. Just tell me exactly where oversharing is happening, which files, which folders are overshared, because I cannot go through the entire list of contents that is there in my site. That's not good use of my time. So you see, this is the Contoso Finance site. This is the site owner's view, site admin's view, where they can directly go and then find out where oversharing is happening. And I'll explain a little bit more. This is a very critical report. So just as an example, in this screen, you see this document service usage dashboard. Okay. You will notice that the total number of permissioned user in my demo example is like 5,000. Now, from common sense, you would know that no end user will go and share a file to physically to 5,000 people. Like you don't click on the share button 5,000 times as an end user, right? So which means you are trying to share with some large groups. That is a lot of people, probably you are not aware. Okay. So now we also show to the admin the groups that are attached to that file specifically. So you hover on the total groups icon, which is 4 here, okay, and then it tells you what are the groups that are given permission to this specific document and what is the count of users. So you have now identified that, oh, because somebody by mistake or by intent have permissioned the Contoso FT group, and that is the main contributor of oversharing in this case. Probably we shouldn't have done that. And then what he can do is he click on the Manage Access button and then remove the user directly from this screen. Then they can click on the status. So we have 3 identified status, and I'll show in the demo. So they can say, I have taken action, or they can also say, no, I will not take an action because this was intended. And then this workflow will go back to the admin center, and the screen that I showed earlier, it will stay there as record. So this is how we are tying the story. Find oversharing, admin takes action, goes to site owners. Site owners knows exactly where oversharing is happening. They can take action by removing any large sharing that is happening, and then respond back to the admin. This is how we close the cycle. Okay. Do you guys like it? Cool. So thank you. Let's roll the demo to see this in action. This is a 3-minute demo. Generally, when you communicate with the site owner, they don't respond immediately. I compress that entire thing to 3 minutes. So be patient, and I'll walk you through. So this is how the new report will show up. It's called permissioned user report. That's what we call. Click on Add Report. A bunch of, and I'll pause really. This is slightly risky to pause. Yeah. One thing which I told you earlier, 2 categories in the top, SharePoint and OneDrive. So you can find oversharing happening across your ecosystem. You need to choose between SharePoint and OneDrive. You can choose different templates. You can then, there are other parameters like if you want to do by sensitivity labels of that is there on the site or document, you can choose that. The report type column is very important. The report type column tells us the new nature of the report, which is activity based, which we already had last 28 days. This is mainly based on audit data, but this new report is on snapshot data. Like, tell me about the permissions that is there on the sites as of now. Okay, I don't care what happened earlier or in the last 28 days, but tell me what oversharing is happening now. Okay, so you can make that choice. And then in the very last text box, here you can give your upper limit. So you can say, according to my company's policies, if the number of users who are ACLed or permission to the content is more than 1,000, you will be able to run the report accordingly. So this is what I was showing earlier. We run the report. It takes time, okay, because we have to go to every file, every folder, and every site recursively to nth level to find this out. It takes like some time if you run it against very large sites, very large tenancy with hundreds and thousands of sites. We choose that. So the admin chooses that, initiate site access review. This is the new flow, workflow we are talking about, directly from the report. Okay, sends a message, okay, to the site owners. So once you send it out, it will land in our site access review page. You can go to the site access review from here. It will show in the report that my requests are in pending state at this point in time. This is our landing page for all your review requests, because you can generate over a period of time many, hundreds of requests for different site owners. So this is the consolidated place to store. You see the 2 sites that I generated right now are in pending state. So the owner gets the email that, hey, a review request has been generated for you. Clicks on see where this is happening. Takes you directly as a site owner to the exact location in that site where this information is there, where oversharing is happening, to which file, to which folder. And I was explaining earlier, you get all the information in one pane, find out that oversharing is happening, click on the link of groups, or you discover Contoso FTE is actually contributing to your oversharing. So with that information now, you know what you need to do. So what the admin does is clicks on manage access right from here, and then removes Contoso FTE, because in this example, it was not needed to be permission. Somebody just did that. And then you mark your thing as complete so that your admin knows that you have taken action. You can put your comment, okay? If you can say that I am not taking action because there is a business reason I have shared this with everybody, or you can say, yes, I have taken action, and this you can close this review process to by the SharePoint admin. Once this is done, this screen refreshes, but the SharePoint admin gets to know that, yes, action has been taken, and this review request is now complete. We also show the comments that the site owner or the site admin has given. Quickly switching, because I have a whole bunch of content to cover. Again, this is an extremely new area where we are venturing. So just now we discovered, we spoke about finding oversharing, where contents are getting overshared. And the parameters that we used is number of people who have access to the site, to the file or folder. Now, if you want to go beyond, we were thinking how we can even more help the SharePoint admin. So in several cases, SharePoint admin do not know the content that is inside, because he's not permissioned to see content that is inside a specific site. However, he knows the nature of content that can be of sensitive nature, right? So let's say legal document or HR-related document, some research-related document that is very important for your company and things like that. So now, with the power of AI and semantic search, what you can do is, and I'll play the demo, you can provide a sample content and say, hey, SharePoint, use this power of AI, okay, and Copilot to go search all contents which are semantically similar to the content the file that I have provided or the site that I have provided, and then find all such instances. And now this will be a good starting point for you to analyze, oh, I now found out all the sites where such contents are there, and I am going to analyze if those sites are overshared. Okay. So this is a good starting point for you to find out more sensitive contents without getting into details. So let's play the demo. This is going to come up, everything what we are showing, you can sign up for preview, and we can light them up in your tenant. So This is also under data access governance. This is a new report that is coming up. The generation process is seamless. So in this screen, it's asking for reference. Okay, so either you can give a site or a bunch of files, okay, and say, hey, this is my reference data. Find data similar to this. Okay, that's what you are telling to the system. So you can give a CSV file with sites that has that information. So in this example, I choose finance. So it has finance-related terminology, nomenclature, etc. And then once you run the report, when you run the report, you can run the report against a set and say, run this report against this 10,000 sites or 100,000 sites. And then you get the response back. Super critical, on your top left, you see with this information, the total number of sites. In my example, I scanned across around 1,300 sites. Out of 1,300 sites, 150 sites have similarity matching score that we derive from AI is greater than 80%. We do not report everything. We just report where it's relevant or we think it will be relevant to you. So when we semantically match, AI model, LLM model gives us a score back of what is this, the matching score. And if the matching score is more than 80, then we report. So 150 sites have contents that are very, very similar. And then we say that for input, if you have provided me a site which has external sharing disabled, then I recommend the site that I found as similar. If it is not enabled, then there is a discrepancy because sensitive content lying somewhere is protected, but the similar sensitive content lying somewhere else in your tenancies in some other site is potentially not protected. So you might want to be aware of that. So this screen I wanted to show, which is, the name of the site is risk management. It matched 95% with my input content. I can see all the policies that AI is recommending should happen to the site, but it is not there because based on your input. So we can say that, oh, there is a conditional access policy which is correctly configured. However, your external sharing policy should have been off because the sensitive content is there. However, this site do not has the external sharing turned off. You might want to be aware of that. And then take similar actions as I have demonstrated earlier, which is you can talk to the site owners using the same site access review process, and you can take other actions as well. Cool? You guys like it? And again, we are just getting started, so please come, use the feature in preview and give us feedback. Changing gears slightly. All this time, we were talking about the user persona, because oversharing is generally done via the user persona. Your end users work, collaborate, and then over a period of time, things get overshared and doesn't get cleaned up. The other pivot to this one is enterprise applications. So you have a lot of applications that you register in AD and give a scope of SharePoint site.read-all or manage. So these are very powerful scopes that you assign to applications which are headless, meaning a crawling application. It doesn't need a user to sign in. It just runs in the background. So your background applications are accessing data. Sometimes the data is sensitive, and you do not want your applications, maybe LOB application app or some other apps, to access the data. We are providing this application insight report where you will be able to know in the last 28 days which application is accessing which site. As an example, I'm highlighting this fictitious app, app 4, is accessing my marketing data, which is marked as classified as top secret. Why is this app? This app was supposed to be some LOB app doing some reporting somewhere else. Why is this app accessing this site's content? And this now makes you think, analyze, and take some action. Okay, so we want you to have this information with you. This is the last part and very critical. So Dave started our conversation by telling that now we have a lot of data explosion and exponential growth has happened, which is good in one way, because to make your Copilot more effective, you need to feed data to Copilot. You need to give content to AI so that you get back good recommendations, good information, good summarization, and knowledge back. But you are careful. You must be careful, because some data that that you do not want, it's your secret sauce and whatnot, you do not want in the beginning for new things to start reading. So we have some nice solutions that are coming up in this area. The first one is restricted access control. You are probably aware of this, and if you're not aware, I'll run the demo really quickly. Restricted access control is your first stop as a SharePoint admin against oversharing. So let's say you ran any of our oversharing report that you have seen earlier. You want to take an action. Okay. If I run the demo, it will be easier, and I'll go back to the slide. So for the same report, I'll show the demo. So if you remember, I did it for the Contoso finance site. The finance site owner responded back to me, life is good, because there is no oversharing anymore. However, the Contoso marketing site owner or owners never responded back to me. I, as an admin, did send out an access review to them. I'm waiting. So in this case, I want to, as an admin, take immediate action, okay, to stop this potential leaking of data that is happening. Okay. So let's see how we do that. So you can select and click on restrict access. This is inbuilt within your report. And then you can provide the security group that you want to only have access. So you might have 1,000 users accessing your site. However, when you put this access control, which is called restricted access control, in short RAC, you will now supersede those permissions with this security group. Or you can also use a Microsoft 365 group as well. Only users of that group will now have access. So you can now immediately stop this leaking of data while you are communicating with the site owners behind the scene. Okay. The cool part of this is once you apply this control on a site, your Copilot will also follow the policy, which means any user who are part of this new security group can continue to access the data from this site via Copilot and search, versus all other users who earlier had access. Okay, and I did not remove all those thousands of users manually, right? Because it's a time-consuming process, and my discussion with my site owner is going on. All those users will lose access to the site and cannot query, ask for summarization, etc. via Copilot. Okay, so it is an immediate action that we take.
Yeah, just a really quick example. We've had a customer a few months ago where they were testing the Copilot. The admin was actually testing the Copilot, and one of the questions she asked the Copilot was, "Are there any reorgs happening in my organization?" The Copilot gave her a really nice summary of all the reorgs that are happening, and her organization was actually getting impacted as well. So that was before it was announced or anything else like that. So these are the type of things that, if they leak out, you can use this, what Sanjoyan just mentioned, to really lock it down right there within seconds, right?
Yep. For sake of time, I'll now move to this very important control. I'll explain the scenario first, okay, so that you understand the problem. In the previous policy that I just now described, which is restricted access control, the main challenge which you or SharePoint admins face is, how do I know which group I need to choose for a given site? I have 100,000 sites, I'm just throwing an example. So you have this task to prevent oversharing. You have bought Copilot license, and or you are planning to buy Copilot license. Your manager or your CEO is asking you to deploy because you want that intelligence out of Copilot, but at the same time you are worried because your data is overshared. The data might get unintentionally accessible by many people, and you do not want to disrupt your productivity of your end user. Meaning, in my last policy, restricted access control, as I gave an example, the 1,000 users lost access. Okay, only the people in the correct security group continue to have access to that site, but that is a restrictive control, like really. So if you do not want to go at that level and just want to say, remove the contents of this site from being used for the purpose of analysis and summarization, etc., by Copilot, okay, and tenant-wide search, then use this control because it will not disrupt the access. Your end users will continue to be productive, can access the site. However, initially the summarization and search ability via Copilot will be prevented for this site. So if you have an idea of the site, then all you need to do is run this new commandlet which we are launching as a SharePoint admin against the site, which is give the URL of the site, set SPO site. You must be familiar with set SPO site commandlet, which is a very common commandlet. The new control that we are bringing in is restrict content org-wide search, and you just need to turn this as true. That's it. And this is a property on the site object. So what happens is, and I want to put a caveat because it depends on the number of files in the site. A site can have like a million file, so it takes some time. For the index to re-index. There is no magic. So we apply this property. We do some re-indexing processes, and now we set this flag on every file folder object in that site. And Copilot is intelligent enough to read that information and say, I am going to suppress reading this file before providing the information to the end user. So the end user's query will work. It will just not consider the file that it picked, though you have access, okay, because you continue to work. So this is to accelerate your Copilot deployment. Please, if you have already got Copilot licenses, okay, and you are worried about your data, how to protect your data initially, okay, then this is a very good new control that we are building so that you can use it and start. However, do remember one very important point. Data is important for Copilot and AI to give you good results. So use this with diligence. You use this only to your sensitive content. If, let's say, you have 100 sites and you applied this to all like 95 sites, so your Copilot will be less intelligent because it will read data from only 5 sites. So this is a powerful weapon, and do use this with discretion. Policy insights, very interesting, very less time remaining, so I'll very quickly finish. What do we mean by policy insights? Historically, if you are aware of audit information in SharePoint, we show audit information for all positive actions, meaning Dave accessed a SharePoint site, Dave opened a file, Dave edited a file, okay, Dave shared a file with somebody else. All these things are positive actions. In my previous demo, I applied a very restrictive control called RAC, Restricted Access Control. After that, Dave lost access to that site. With this report, for all our restrictive policies, you will be able to find out who are getting denials for the very first time. Meaning, in this report, I can find out this Bob person is trying to access my site, which is Contoso IT crisis management site, several times in the last 28 days. Why he is trying to access so many times, even if he's denied for the first time, like what is the purpose? And it may not be malicious all the time. Maybe it's just a business process that is getting impacted because of your policy. So you get this new capability report where you can now, and this we provide in CSV also for your further analysis. So all access denials, so that you can give your end users a better experience. So you go to the person or the department and speak to them and provide them more information, okay? Because previously you never know how many people were denied the service, denied the access, but with this report we have brought that capability to you. So with that, I'll hand over to Dave to take us through the last part.
So I'm not going to spend too much time taking us through the whole thing, but please take pictures of this. This is our roadmap for the next several months. A lot of it we covered, so this is one of them. And when we said this is just the tip of the iceberg, we mean it. There's a lot of things that we're bringing here. This is just the beginning, and here's the other part of that as well. This is also an important one to take on. So on the left here, we have the sign up for previews. So a lot of the things that you saw here are either already in preview or coming into preview very shortly. So please sign up and let us know if you would like to participate in that. And then on the one on the right is our article that just came out as part of this conference that has the descriptions and videos and all sorts of goodies as part of that that you can actually use and deep dive into further. Yes. And now we're open for questions.
Based on top of syntax and enabling inside the syntax, please up over separate management.
This is part of the SharePoint Premium suite of products set that we are bringing in. Yes, yes. Syntax rebranded to SharePoint Premium, yes. Here, I'll finish line. Go ahead.
For those, the DAC reports where they show how many groups have access to like a context, right? Does that include groups that only have like limited access at that level, or do they have to have like a direct like read or contribute access at that specific level to show up in there?
Is that a feedback? We have the data. We did not, show it in the report, but we know if the group or the user has read access, write access, full control. We can show that. Okay. You should give that feedback. Yes. And.
So for RCD, are there any plans to allow tenant-wide search but restrict the Copilot part of it?
Not now. Very good question. We appreciate that question. Not immediately.
Question on licensing. I noticed a lot of the slides had a little asterisk at the bottom saying it's included in this advanced management license in small print, in very small print. Do we have to do it for all users? Is it just admins for a lot of the features? I know.
Can we take that? That's a very common question. Dave will.
It's all users, and the reason is because like it's a lot of these policies and features are managed by admins, but really are applying to all the users. So if you just license certain users and not others, oversharing protection will not really work that well. So it really needs to be a tenant-wide.
Okay. Ever included in E5? M365?
No. It's a separate SKU. Yeah.
I would say do not worry about licensing.
Yeah.
We have trial, so do try the feature, and then things can be discussed.
So okay. That's a good point. So our goal is to build a product to you that works for your organization, that works for your customers. The pricing is something that we can talk through, right? It's something that if it is something interesting to you, please let us know through your accounts teams, etc., and we can figure it out.
For the preview, is that something that would be like included with a test trial, or do you?
Yeah. So there's a 30-day free trial, and if you are in the preview, it's free. We're just gonna light things up for you, and you can test them out, run the reports, and etc.
The Copilot features for the SharePoint admin that side of things, is that part of that, or like the Copilot license, or is that part of the SharePoint advanced management?
So the Copilot, which
the way you can modify tenant settings with Copilot. I think you talked about it. Yeah.
Oh yeah, yesterday. So you would have to have the Copilot license for that. It's basically anything that is that interacts with the Copilot. You have to have a Copilot.
Like M365 Copilot.
So M365 Copilot will give you certain things. So for a lot of things that I showed yesterday, you would need to have the Copilot and SAM to enable a lot of the functionality. Yeah.
Dave,
exactly.
Can we take the licensing question together so that we can address feature questions?
I see. Yep.
Yeah. Sorry.
So is everything that we saw here part of SAM, or do you need the SharePoint Premium or Syntax?
So it's all part of SAM. So if you have SAM, you have all the stuff that we showed.
All the stuff we showed today, yes.
Just quick question about the last topic you presented about indexing and removing, aside from the indexing of Copilot.
No, we are not removing. We need to be careful. We are re-indexing in the right way so that you can still search the content. So let's say you have access to the site. So you go to the site, okay, and then within the site you can search, okay. However, suppose you are in Teams and you click on Microsoft 365 Copilot and then you are searching, give me green energy related stuff. Now, if that file or a file belonging to that site needs to be considered by Copilot, it will drop it because that site was marked special.
Okay, but what is the difference with the removing? Because today you already have that option to remove the site
no index.
From
yeah,
the search.
I can explain after this. Okay, we should talk. Yeah.
That's a different functionality. So are you talking about the RSS, the tenant-wide search restriction? Yeah. So that basically removes all your sites from tenant search. What he's talking about is targeted to specific sites. Oh. Yeah. So you don't have to.
It's an allow list versus a deny thing.
So RSS is a very kind of a big thing to turn off, right? If you're turning off search.
And Dave, that's just excluding it from tenant-wide search, right? Not from site search.
Correct.
That's right. Yep.
Hi. So I saw an example about Copilot injections. So when you put a site into read-only, does it remove the extract option, or maybe I misunderstood that term?
So read-only means can't.
Will not remove read-only from the index, so you can still search. So Copilot works like search. If you can search, then Copilot will work. This is a new concept that we have introduced that, now you will not be able to search in a tenant-wide search and in Copilot. However, you will be able to do search when you physically go to the site, because a site can have 100,000 files, so you can still search within the site.
Extract.
It is, I will like to know, because extract data, we use that term in relation to encryption. So let's talk after this.
Hi, hello. First, great presentation and context. So
Thank you.
Congratulations. So based on the discoverability, right? I know that it's for avoiding tenant-wide to find that search in Copilot, but if I am a user that I know that I have access, that I will keep remaining having access, but I want to also see in Copilot that can be a challenge on balancing. Oh, Copilot is not working because I know I have access to this and I cannot see it. So there is a way, or we are thinking like how to manage that in the future. That is the first part of the question. And based on that, because you mentioned this is good only for a few kind of sites with kind of confidential information. So the thing is, in this stage, like I think admins in general will try to apply everything like in general to all the sites because they don't know. And
They don't know.
With enterprise customers, I work with enterprise customers, it will be like a ton of time and storage, whatever. So my question, just to summarize, is there will be like a best practices or guidance on recommendations on how kind of sites we should try to apply the different policies. Thank you.
Yeah, no, that's a very, very good question for everybody else, that in order to select which site to apply this nice policies, that is a long process. You have to understand and then only go and apply that. So it takes time. We are going to come up with the best practices. You see, using other reports where oversharing is happening, I showed 2 different ways of identifying oversharing. That is your input, that, oh, these sites are overshared. Can Copilot read this, and is it okay for Copilot to read? So, you should use these facilities to narrow down your criteria. Correct. And there are other options, so we should talk more on that. Okay.
The notifications to the site owners, how heavily you can customize that and how the translation works.
Dave, how heavily or what level of flexibility we can provide to customize the email that we send to site owners?
Notification to.
Yes, when you're sending the notification.
So that's a good question. So the translation, you mean for the emails and
Yes.
stuff? Okay, so those are not there yet. That is something that we're building into it. But the text itself you can edit, right? You can write it in whatever language and copy it and paste it in. It's just if you're asking if that could be done automatically as you're writing the content, not yet.
Yeah. And also, like, can we apply, like, I know you can apply a logo, but what about any template customization?
You can do the logo, you can customize the text, you can customize pretty much everything, but not the design of it. Like, you can't design it yet. Yeah.
If I have a site with over 100 document libraries, does the report display the permission level for those document libraries?
Yes. Yes.
Yep. Including broken inheritance, nth level files, everything.
It's a comprehensive permission state report. Yep.
So the question is, like, when we are getting the reports, does these reports include the file shared via Teams or the OneDrive or through the channels?
I need to clear the stage for him.
Where it was shared, by which app it was shared. We are just showing that it was shared, right? So Sanjan, this might be a good feedback for you. If the reports include which app it was shared with, right? So like if the file was shared, kind of breaking it down where it was shared exactly.
Very good feedback.
Yeah, that's great feedback.
Yep.
And my question is pretty simple, I think. Is there the ability to integrate it with Power BI to create your own custom reports specifically for like executives who don't really want to understand the details? They want to have it a little bit more high level and customized for them?
Yeah, so as of right now, we don't have Power BI integration with this reports. We do give you CSV that you can kind of import and do all sorts of fun things with it, but it's not a direct integration yet. Yeah.
So since Microsoft tends to create a site every time you blink, for every
collaborate.
I'm sorry, no, every time you blink. What happens when you delete a site that's attached to a security group or a private channel or on and on and on? Pick your variation of a theme.
Great question. So that inactive sites policy, for example, right? Like your question is, you could have a team size that is connected to a team. And so if the site is inactive, does not mean that the team is inactive. So you delete the site or archive the site, in fact. So when we say inactivity in this report, we're actually going and checking inactivity of the site, inactivity of any resource that it's attached to or it's connected to or can impact.
Even a security call. So in the case of a security group, those are completely passive sites, right? You use them for security controls, but you don't use them for content.
So
they're
those
technically inactive.
Yeah, so those sites don't actually show up in the SharePoint Admin Center, as far as
Yes, it does.
The SharePoint, do they show up?
Site review, you mentioned that you can create it and put some actions there. So let's put it this way, the site will be in compliance. What's going to happen in terms of lifecycle? And the next time that I want to run the report, that site that gave me the comment, I have a large group, what's going to happen in the next cycle? I'm going to call him again to give the same question, or are you going to be excluding from the next cycle?
For which report? For inactivity report or?
I think it was what he presented. Yes.
So the question is for reports. It's a site that doesn't have much activity, but it has a bunch of.
No, the site has been inactive or something, or actually no, was related to the permissions. So when you have a long list permission, someone says to you, admin, I have Azure AD group, it's large group, so forget about it, it's not oversharing. Click, appears in the report as complete. Yes. Next year, maybe, I want to run a report again. This site was already certified. How am I going to work with those sites that I have a comment from the owner that is compliance, but the report says again.
You can choose to override and say that he needs to respond back to you.
Back again.
Again, yes.
Like in a year control.
Any cadence is like actually, we didn't speak about that. So this is like an attestation process. Okay, so you can go in a 6 months cadence, 3 months cadence, and say, is your site still healthy? Are you still using the site correctly? Are people permission to the site correctly, and things like that? So you can process that, and then it will override. Okay. And it's mandatory for site owners to click, or else you are going to make the site read only, as Dave was showing, and then deprovision the site if you don't get response after 3 attempts. So that's doable.
For the restricted access control policy, is that end user experience going to be similar to the access request settings like you could set per team site? I guess, what is it going to be like for end users?
So when you say restricted access control,
means
you are my end user.
Yeah.
I restricted control on a given site which you had access to.
Mm-hmm.
So you will get the experience as 401 access denied. You cannot access the site anymore because you restricted access in your a policy says restricted access.
Okay.
When you are doing a site access review as an admin, you do not want to restrict access because you don't know if it's appropriate. So that is the conversational process and workflow that I am having with the owners to see that is it justified to have still have access to the site, or many users have access to the site.
Okay, I guess for like if I am on the site and I want to share a specific file or a folder, my understanding is that's restricted.
Yes.
Okay, and so would it be similar, like I saw the share button and then it just says.
It will very, very good question. That's exactly at sharing time. Say that you're trying to share with
I don't want to interrupt.
Who is not part of that restricted group.
Right.
Yes, so we will give you that message. So you're able to.
Okay.
Thank you. Good question.
When will all the features be generally available?
Yeah.
And is the ownerless site policy, is that going to be in the preview?
Yeah.
Or is that available in a trial right now, or?
Not right now. It's coming up as preview.
Actually, I can sign up. Come at 1 p.m. in the Ask the Expert session. You can sign up for a preview starting the next couple of weeks.
Okay.
You must, yeah.
The site owner oversharing stuff he said is site by site. Is there any plan to have like a all sites I own view if somebody's the owner across multiple sites?
So like Sanjan is the owner of like a report that shows what Sanjan owns, kind of, which sites it is. Yeah.
So if you're an owner on 20 sites and you've got 20 emails saying you've got
Give her a
oversharing
price
stuff,
already.
Yeah. That's a good question. That's a good question. So we are working on a site owner dashboard that will give you visibility of everything you own, basically. And all these communications that are coming in email right now, they'll also show up there as well. So you can see them.
By yesterday, please?
Yeah. So that's something that we're getting asked. Yeah. So that's something that we would love to connect with you to get your feedback on, but we are actually designing that and iterating that right now. Yeah.
We're an M365 partner and we get that a lot from our clients.
Totally. Yeah.
Is there any way to develop any type of customized reports based upon the internal DLPs or MIPs that we design ourselves? So one of the biggest problems we're running into is not the actual governance of the site, it's the data. Yes. So meaning that the data inside has been mislabeled because it's been there for 25 years and people have just clicked whatever button to get to the next step and they don't care what's inside of it. Yep. So we don't trust them. So we run internal DLPs to see whether there's any PHIs and PIs. Yeah.
So for now, the way to do it is, and we'll publish this in our, somebody asked about best practices guidelines. So you run DLP in identifying SITs,
right?
Sensitive information types.
Correct.
So unleash DLP to find out in simulation mode all the files where this sensitive information is hanging around, right? Get the response back, download as CSV. So you now know every site where this kind of things are there. The capability which we could not show today is you can input now that piece of information.
That's what I was wondering.
Yeah.
Okay.
The list of sites to our permission report and say, now run permission check on these sites.
Okay, that's what I want to make sure. Like take our internal reports and build a customized. Okay, cool. Does it have an API to connect to it for that, or is it a manual CSV import?
We do not have an API at this point in time. It will take some time to build that entire API pipeline.
How easily reversible when you do the restrictive access? How easily can you reverse it?
Yeah.
Oh, okay.
Yeah, you just basically turn it off. It's like a setting.
Right.
Go in and turn it off.
Thank you.
All right. Thank you, guys.